Alrighty, party peoples of the interwebs, an update in the Stephen Bannon legal case. He's in jail, you might recall. But first, Kamala Harris had a straight-up Howard Dean moment.
And I want to make it go viral.
Should never again have the privilege of standing behind the seal of the President of the United States. Never again. Never again. Never again.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Viva Frei, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler in my home office, and a lot of people have been asking me, pinging me this week, is there an update in the Stephen Bannon case? And there is, in fact, an update. But first, Kamala Harris had the most unhinged moment today at some point. I don't know where it was exactly, but it is reminiscent of the Howard Dean moment. The scream heard round the world, the yeehaw that ended his political campaign. I'm not good at memeing. I'm not really good at hashtagging, but my goodness, I'm good at making connections. I edited these two videos together, and it is eerily similar, and I want the consequences to be the same. May this end Kamala Harris's campaign now.
Not only are we going to New Hampshire, Tom Harkin, we're going to South Carolina and Oklahoma and Arizona and North Dakota and New Mexico. We're going to California. We're going to South Dakota and Oregon. And then we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House.
Never again.
The link to the tweet is in the pinned comment. The link to the short is in the pinned comment. I created the hashtag Kamala Dean. I'm not sure how good that is, but bottom line, share away like your constitutional republic depends on it.
Because I think it does.
And now back to Steve Bannon, currently in jail, which is not as much of a disjointed segue as you might think it is. The other day, Kamala Harris did that interview with Bret Baier, during which she accused her adversaries of potentially, if they ever get into power, doing exactly what the Biden-Harris regime is doing right now.
And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it. And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
Oh, if Donald Trump ever gets back into power, he's going to abuse the Department of Justice to go after his political enemies, like he even did that in the first place. When he had the power, he didn't do it. You are doing it right now, and Steve Bannon is the prime example of your political persecution. You might recall that Steve Bannon is currently serving a 4-month sentence, having been convicted of contempt of Congress. And when I say that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are the villains they warn you of, it's because they actually went after Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro and sentenced them for something that few people even get charged with, let alone convicted. And if you don't believe me, I'm not offended. You should not trust and verify, although in my case you should trust but verify, because I still make some mistakes. But don't trust me. Here are the facts. From U.S. News, what is contempt of Congress and why does it matter? Merrick Garland is now the third Attorney General to be held in contempt of Congress from June 13, 2024. Because people are not often but sometimes held in contempt of Congress, such as Merrick Garland, such as Eric Holder, that guy that was held in contempt of Congress for refusing to divulge the documents as relates to that Fast and Furious debacle that led to a Border Patrol agent getting killed because Obama was smuggling guns into Mexico for the cartels to use and they ended up killing a guy? Yeah, Eric Holder was held in contempt of Congress. The difference was that he was never charged, let alone convicted. Back to the article, the Justice Department rarely opts to move forward with presenting contempt charges to a jury, an even rare move when it involves an administration official. Since 2008, Congress has held 10 people in contempt, and the Justice Department has indicted 2 of them. And take a guess as to the political affiliation of the only 2 since 2008 that they have charged with contempt of Congress. Oh, I don't know, they had a little bit of a tie to Donald Trump. But don't pay attention to that. Donald Trump is the one who's going to weaponize the Department of Justice to prosecute his political rivals.
He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy,
Lady, you're scaring us.
the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up.
Hashtag confession through projection, the iron law of woke projection. Accuse your enemies of doing what you are doing so as to create confusion. It's a Nazi propaganda tactic used by Joseph Goebbels. Sorry, back to the article. Since 2008, Congress has held 10 people in contempt, and the Justice Department has indicted 2 of them. The 2 former Trump White House advisors, Stephen Bannon and Peter Navarro, were both convicted for refusing to comply with subpoenas issued by the House Jan 6 committee in its investigation of the 2021 insurrection at the Capitol. So yeah, the prosecution of Bannon and Navarro, political prosecution, exactly what they are accusing Trump of potentially doing if he ever gets back into office, stuff that he never did the first time around. But it's even more egregious than that. Bannon was held in contempt of Congress. He was charged with it. He was convicted of it, and he was sentenced to 4 months in jail. And he asked that that sentence be suspended pending his appeal. And no, the Justice Department said, no, we gotta lock you away, notwithstanding your appeal, so that by the time your appeal is heard, and if this is ever overturned, you've already served your 4 months. From the New York Times, Supreme Court rejects Bannon's appeal to delay prison sentence. Stephen Bannon will have to begin serving 4 months in prison on Monday after the court turned aside his request to remain free while he appeals his conviction for contempt of Congress. So not only does the Biden-Harris administration prosecute Bannon for stuff that nobody has ever been prosecuted for, pretty much. Not only do they prosecute him for that, they then get him convicted. They then sentence him to 4 months in prison, and they then also say, no, we are not suspending your sentence pending an appeal. So you'll serve your time, and even if you win on appeal, we've gotten our 4 months of you in jail. And when was that sentence served? Oh yeah, that's right.
From July to November.
From July to November 2024, in the heat of the election cycle when Donald Trump is running, Stephen Bannon being one of his most prominent supporters, vocal advocates, his voice on the field. Steve Bannon, who has a massive following, lock him up in the 4 months leading to the November election. But it's not just that he was held in contempt of Congress. It's not just that they charged him. It's not just that he was convicted. It's not just that he was ordered to serve his sentence, notwithstanding his appeal. Apparently, they're not even letting him out of jail, despite what the law requires. From an article in the National Pulse, exclusive Bannon prison statement, quote, Biden-Harris are illegally holding me past my release date, end quote. Washington, D.C., former Trump White House chief advisor Stephen K. Bannon has issued a blistering statement sent to the National Pulse explaining how the Biden-Harris regime is holding him illegally, refusing to accept his First Step Act eligibility, and incarcerating him longer than required in order to swing the election. Quote, Kamala Harris is the, quote, queen of mass incarcerations, end quote, Bannon told the National Pulse. Quote, detested by Black and Hispanic men who are refusing to turn out and vote for her. She has done nothing to implement President Trump's heroic First Step Act, in fact welcoming hundreds of thousands of hardened illegal migrant criminals while allowing U.S. citizens eligible for early release to rot in prison. No mass deportations, but continued mass incarcerations, end quote. And what is this piece of legislation known as the First Step Act? Well, I think it's a piece of Trump legislation that was supposed to allow first-time nonviolent offenders to get out of prison early, and lo and behold, they're locking him up, not letting him out pending his appeal, and not even letting him out despite the requirements of the law. The First Step Act, passed in December 2018, aims to reform the federal prison system by reducing sentences for nonviolent offenders and focusing on rehabilitation. A key provision allows inmates to earn time credits through participation in educational and vocational programs, potentially leading to early release into pre-release custody such as halfway houses or home confinement. The law also expands compassionate release for elderly or terminally ill prisoners. Bannon is expected to be released on October 29th, though qualified for First Step Act early release last month. Bannon is not terminally ill, but he is, I guess, elderly. I think he's 70 years old. But not only are they locking people up, this is the party of criminal justice reform. This is the party that is accusing Trump of potentially weaponizing the process to go after his political rivals, who have themselves weaponized the process to go after their political rivals and are now ignoring the very law that was intended to rehabilitate people. The law that was intended to depopulate the prison system to allow those first-time offenders, nonviolent offenders, early release if they are good citizens within the prison system. The bottom line here, though, is that Stephen K. Bannon is not a good prisoner as far as they're concerned, because he didn't bend over backwards, lick their boot, and say, I love Big Brother. He is defiant even in jail, and to them, he hasn't learned his lesson. This is reminiscent of that Judge Matthew Barrett in Colorado who sentenced Tina Peters to 9 years in prison, a 69-year-old woman, Gold Star mom with no criminal record, 9 years in jail for election interference, and as he's berating her, sentencing her to what could be the rest of her life in jail, he has to remind her that she has shown no remorse for what she's done. She has shown no remorse for what she's done, done because she thought that she was actually abiding by the law in doing what she was doing, Stephen K. Bannon has shown no remorse for what he's done because he actually thought he was abiding by the law by not adhering to that subpoena for reasons of executive privilege. But no, Stephen K. Bannon has not said, "I love Big Brother," so they're not going to let him out. They're going to make an example out of him leading into this election cycle, much like they're making an example out of Tina Peters heading into this election cycle. Anybody questions or contests the outcome of the election and takes whatever lawful measures or whatever they believe to be lawful measures to contest it, you might spend the rest of your life in jail. That's the message being sent to everybody on the other side of the political spectrum. But these hypocrites and these scoundrels are accusing Trump of being the one to weaponize the Department of Justice to go after his political rivals, to lock up his political adversaries, when that is exactly what they're doing in real time as they accuse Trump of potentially maybe doing it, even though he never even did it the first time he had power. Oh yeah, and by the way, have you subscribed and turned on notifications and dropped a comment in the comment section and given this video a thumbs up? It helps. Please do it. Take the time right now. It takes 3 seconds. Go down there. Do it. But that is the Stephen K. Bannon update, and while they're locking him up and shutting him up, it is up to us, everyone on the outside, to make as much noise as humanly possible. Get out there, vote, take 10 people with you, vote like the future of your constitutional republic depends on it, because I dare say it actually does, and that is it. The most important thing: exercise, eat healthy, sunlight, get out there, talk to people in real life, and now you know your vlog, and make Kamala Dean go viral. Peace out, peeps. Booyah!
Should never again have the privilege of standing behind the seal of the President of the United States. Never again. Never again. Never again.
You fucking crazy, man. You sound insane. Do you realize that? You should be medicated.